Hey everyone, this is going to be a heavy one. While the world watches political theatre unfold, some genuinely shocking decisions are reshaping Europe right before our eyes. And honestly, what I'm seeing coming out of Germany is absolutely mind-blowing. But first, let me start with what's happening across the pond because this affects all of us. If you're new here, I'm Andrew Meet Rich. I used to work inside a state-run media outlet, saw how stories were twisted to fit the narrative, and I walked away. Now I'm independent, I speak freely, and I tell you what really matters. So Donald Trump just wrapped up his historic two-day state visit to the United Kingdom, and let me tell you, this wasn't just diplomatic pleasantries. The man arrived with First Lady Melania and was greeted by Prince William and Princess Catherine of Wales. We're talking full royal treatment here: Windsor Castle ceremony, horse-drawn carriage procession, state banquet, military flyovers, the works. But here's what actually matters beyond the pageantry. The next day, Trump sat down with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and they weren't discussing the weather, folks. We're talking bilateral investment programs, steel and aluminum tariffs, the Middle East situation, and naturally the war in Ukraine. Word is that Starmer and Trump are expected to sign nuclear energy agreements and expand cooperation in defense technology. Now, I'm watching this closely because whatever comes out of these meetings will tell us everything about where the Western alliance is headed. Of course, they rolled out the usual suspects on the streets, protesters with their prepared signs and manufactured outrage. Look, for some people, morality has a price tag and money doesn't smell, right? They handed out placards with various slogans, but honestly, these staged protests don't deserve our attention because they're not representing genuine public sentiment. Now, here's where things get absolutely insane, and I mean that literally. European media just dropped a bombshell headline that should terrify anyone who understands economics. The German publication Bild, which is no small outlet, just announced that the European Union's new climate madness is shocking truck manufacturers and putting 70,000 jobs in the commercial transport sector at immediate risk. Are you ready for this? According to EU leadership regulations, truck trailers, not the trucks themselves, the trailers, must become climate neutral and reduce emissions. Even though they have no exhaust system, no engine, nothing, it doesn't matter. If you don't hit emission reduction targets in a few years, you face massive fines. I'm not making this up. Leading trailer manufacturers are already filing lawsuits with the European Court because this is bureaucratic insanity at its finest. They're using computer programs that automatically evaluate technical changes like reduced weight or height as positive improvements. But in reality, this could lead to smaller cargo volumes, which means more empty runs and additional trips. The result: more trucks on the roads and even more emissions. They literally created a problem out of thin air for manufacturers. This is what happens when ideology trumps common sense, and European workers are about to pay the price. But wait, there's more from Germany that you need to know about. Right in the heart of Berlin, they're starting construction on what they're calling a unique center for gene and cell therapy. We're talking about a 10-story building covering 20,000 square meters, a scientific hub where technology meets hope. This gene therapy center is being built specifically for people who cannot be cured by traditional medicine, where conventional treatment is simply powerless. The project is being implemented in partnership with the Charité University Clinic, pharmaceutical giant Bayer, and the Berlin Institute of Health. The center's goal isn't just to research, but to implement discoveries directly into healthcare. In other words, they're going to try different methods right there. 20 startups, young teams, and established biotech companies will be under one roof with their own drug manufacturing facility. If I can put this delicately without offending anyone, startups and pharmaceutical giants will be working together in the same building. There will also be a production complex for developing gene and cell therapy drugs up to the second clinical phase. This means they won't just conduct research. They'll produce actual drugs that can be used in human clinical trials up to a certain stage. Now let's talk about what's brewing in France, because after Polish President Karol Nawrocki met with French President Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace, we learned that both leaders are paying special attention to the European Union's trade agreement with Mercosur countries. That's the bloc of 5 South American nations: Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Both presidents, representing the interests of European farmers, came out against this agreement, stating it could damage the European community's agricultural sector through unfair competition. It's really that simple, and that's exactly where this is heading. While the French president said he has many doubts about this agreement, but only in words, naturally, the Polish leader went further. He pointed to the geopolitical risks of this trade agreement. Poland is very unhappy with this development, so the intrigue continues. What happens next? For farmers, this is a massive problem. But the French president and government have other issues besides farmer concerns, and trust me, they're about to get much worse. If you're finding this information valuable, hit that like button and subscribe because I'm bringing you the stories the mainstream won't touch, and consider becoming a channel sponsor to help keep this independent voice alive. France is preparing for another day of strikes and demonstrations of exceptional scale. We've never seen anything like this before. It's all scheduled for September 18th. The Inter-Union Coalition is calling for protest actions against budget measures. They're planning to hold more than 250 rallies across France. This will lead to serious disruptions in transport and public services. It's already been announced that there will be more than 256 events across the country. Authorities expect the number of demonstrators could exceed 800,000 people, and that means there will be many more people than that. Authorities always underestimate the number of dissatisfied citizens, and this doesn't just apply to France. Also in France, there's been another high-profile theft from the National Museum of Natural History collection. In Paris, they stole gold nuggets valued at 600,000 euros, but they're priceless for historical heritage, the museum stated. The museum also added that the theft occurred at a critical time for cultural institutions, particularly museums, and acknowledged that several public collections have been targeted by thieves in recent months. Most likely this negative trend will continue. Meanwhile, under a new scheme, London's High Court ruled that an asylum seeker who arrived in Britain on a small boat, and people are constantly arriving, you know this, cannot be deported to France. This decision is a blow to British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who faces intense pressure to stop the small boats carrying asylum seekers across the English Channel from France. So once again, we have a failure in the British Prime Minister's plans, in the British government's strategy. The pilot program called One In, One Out, announced between Britain and France back in July, which provided for returning people from Britain to France, is already unsuccessful at this point. There are already serious obstacles. Now, regarding new reports from the United States of America, the Wall Street Journal, which everyone knows but is now questionable, started reporting that former U.S. President Joe Biden is living a much more modest life than his Democratic predecessors, particularly Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, whose presidency, as you know, has already ended. He also doesn't have the opportunity to take a major, well-paying position because there are age restrictions. Biden's pension, as stated, is about $416,000 per year. During the first weeks after his presidential term ended, Joe Biden admitted to several people that he left office with personal debt of approximately $800,000. Additionally, there are mentions of his son Hunter Biden's legal costs and his daughter's divorce, all of which required money. The former president also received a $10 million advance for his memoir book. Basically, they're telling everyone to understand that Joe's affairs are very bad, and his only hope is the memoir book. But we'll see what happens next. There are interesting moments today, and it's not without reason. The world-renowned publication The Economist once again surprised many people with its cover. Moreover, The Economist, as you know, unofficially carries the reputation in social media as a prophetic publication. So on the cover, there's a family of 3 people and 1 car depicted, and there's no one else around. The caption explains, "Don't panic about the global fertility decline. A world with fewer people wouldn't be so bad." That's such an interesting message that could push people toward various conclusions. These are the informational moments for today that also say a lot about where we're heading. Write your opinion about what you think regarding everything that's happening.